Good morning, everybody. I can see lots of people are already with us on this fine Thursday morning. Just going to give us 30 to 60 seconds just to let some additional people join. So we're just gonna let this run for a little bit. In the meantime, feel free to use the chat to say hello. It's always interesting to see where everyone's from, where they're joining us in the UK. You from maybe up in Manchester, you down in Cornwall, maybe in Devon, where I'm from, or you here in London, where I'm currently based today. So again, just going to give it 30 more seconds to let other people join. Great to see some people already using the chat. Hi, Claire. Hi, Raymond. Hi, Salota from Poole. Hi, Jenny from Norfolk. I was actually in Norwich the other weekend. Hi, Naomi, also from Norfolk, I see. Hey, Tom, Raymond again. Good morning. Yeah, good morning. It seems like a lot of energy. I hope everyone's also got their coffee, same as me, for the next 30 to 40 minutes. Hey, Dominic from Devon. Cool. I'm from North Devon myself, which is cool. Okay, nice. I can see a healthy amount of people have now joined us, so we can really get cracking with today's session. So welcome and thank you for joining, for all of you who have come. This session is our CoS masterclass, part of a mini series that we are running with QCS over the next few weeks, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that as well. But over the next 30 to 45 minutes, we're going to cover what's changing with the Home Office, how CoSs actually work, and what the Home Office is now asking for. And also, I'm just going to bring to light some of the common pitfalls that we see fall on organizations and specifically providers over the last few months. Cool. So I'm just making sure everyone can see my screen okay, and they can. So just some quick context on where this fits in on the mini-series. As I said, this is the first of a 4-part mini-series we're running with our partners over at QCS, so that may be how you have heard about today's session. Today is the CoS Masterclass. On the 30th of July, we look at how technology and AI can support your Home Office compliance. A bit after that, on the 6th of August, we'll then be looking at a bit more of a deep dive into your ongoing Home Office compliance and record-keeping duties. And then on the 27th, we've got a really exciting joint session with QCS, all about preparing you for a Home Office or CQC audit. All of our sessions are on a Thursday at 11 a.m. and each session builds on the last. So, feel free to save your seat and register for all of them. They are free to attend. Quick introductions. For those that know me, I apologize, but for those that don't, my name is William Much, and I'm Head of Growth and Partnerships here at Borderless. And Borderless is the platform that runs sponsor license applications, CoS requests, and ongoing Home Office compliance for over 600 employers now in the UK. We've helped secure more than 500 sponsor licenses and 4,500 visas and protect tens of thousands of individuals on our platform. You may have seen me many of the regional care roadshows. Please say if you have. I love meeting people. Also planning to be at the care show in October in Birmingham. Please come say hello. I've probably met many of you here today already in person. It's great to see familiar names and familiar faces. Cool. Also, lots of other people saying good morning as well, which is nice to see. Morning all. And just before we jump into it, we really started Borderless to simplify the complexities of immigration for businesses and sponsored workers. And we are really pushing for a world where borders are no longer barriers and anyone can move anywhere seamlessly and safely. everything we've built is in service of that, including making CoSs less of an obstacle than it has become for organizations. Cool. So what's in today's agenda? Here's how this morning's session is going to run. We've already done introductions, and I'm going to be jumping into what's changed with the Home Office recently, then the mechanisms of CoSs themselves, including the difference between defined, undefined, because occasionally there's still a little bit of uncertainty around that. Then we're going to be looking at what the Home Office is actually asking for when you're putting in a CoS request, and then our practical tips and common pitfalls, then closing up with a Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions as we go along. And actually on that, I'd love to make this session as interactive as possible. At Borderless, we do webinars quite often, but I find that these are a lot more fruitful and fun when I get lots of interaction. So feel free to ask questions as we go in the Q&A. We've also got Prashanth from the Borderless team here moderating, who might be able to direct you in the right place. I'll get to questions as we go, but we'll also have some dedicated time at the end. And again, feel free to chat. Lots of people already chatting, which is great. And no need to take any notes or screenshots. This session is recorded and we can share the slides afterwards. So please sit back, relax, and hopefully learn lots about CoSs this morning. And before we jump into it, what I find is that it's really helpful to know, what trips you up or maybe what's challenging you the most at the moment with CoS requests. So I'm just going to push out a poll, and feel free to let us know you struggling with knowing when to submit an annual versus in-year allocation, pulling the evidence together, struggling given your allocations running low, waiting on more, or are your requests just outright getting queried or refused? And if it's something else, let us know in the chat. I'm just going to push this out now and give myself a second to have a sip of my coffee. I can see some answers coming through, which is amazing. Also already seeing some questions come through, and it's, again, great to see people from all over the UK. Folkestone, hi Amy, Grantham, hi Amita from Kent, hi Henry from Cambridge. Cool. So as I can see now, the poll answers coming in. Looks like 32% of individuals here have just been having problems with requests getting, queried or refused. They can come back, ask for a lot of information. We're going to actually address that issue in this morning session. Other organizations, individuals here having problems across allocations running low. That definitely can happen if you're hiring lots of individuals. You've got lots of renewals coming up, pulling evidence together in time. We know ourselves here at Borderless, helping lots of organizations, they can come back with some very tight deadlines, and doing all of that in addition to your business as usual work can be a lot of headache. Cool, just looking in the chat again. Yep, so Gemma's actually saying they're brand new to the sponsorship process, which is really positive. Lots of organizations get a sponsor license every day. Yet to submit your first CoS, so you're hoping this session can help you understand what you need to do now. 100%, hopefully we'll be addressing some of those points for you, Gemma. Cool, thank you so much for answering that poll. Looks like a lot of queried CoS requests and a lot of refusals. So there's definitely some stuff coming up. It's going to help you be more prepared for those queries and make sure that what you're putting forward to the Home Office has the smallest chance of being refused as possible. But it's always good to know what's the major shift everyone in this room is feeling, what's changing with the Home Office, because this has downstream effects for what happens with CoSs and how the Home Office is handling those requests, and is catching a lot of individuals out. One rule really frames everything that has followed in the last 12 to 18 months, and especially for care providers. And as you all know, since the 22nd of July, you can no longer recruit care or senior care workers from overseas. So in-country switches, still remain open, and those individuals which are maybe already working for your organization for the last 3 months, switching to the care SOC code, have to still have worked for you or been on payroll for the last 3 months. So, for example, this could be a dependent, this could be student or graduate. Keep that in mind as we work through some of the mechanics of COSs. So here's the real shift that we've been seeing. The Home Office now routinely requires substantial additional documentation before it grants you a new COS allocation. And we're seeing refusals in situations that previously presented little difficulty for us at Borderless, and we've really had to adapt the way that we are supporting organizations. The part that typically catches people out is the timeline. When they come back asking for information, you're often just giving them up to 5 working days to respond. If you're not ready, you're really on the back foot and you're scrambling. This used to hit care providers the hardest, and we're now seeing it across all sectors. Feel free to share your experience in the chat. Have you recently been given a window of 5 days to respond to a Home Office request for further documents, or have you not? And for many of you that have been sponsoring for a while now, you'll know that this increased Home Office scrutiny isn't just with the COS application and process. It's more generally around your Home Office compliance. And this increased scrutiny plays out really in 2 columns. The reality is, extra evidence is requested after you've already submitted. Requests increasingly bounce back with queries or refused outright, longer processing times, and far more focus on whether the role is genuine. And we're going to chat a bit more about that. But, all of these realities have day-to-day impacts for you and your organizations. More admin landing on your team, frustration across HR and hiring, especially as your organization grows. And in the worst case, it opens the door to a wider compliance review. What we're seeing is consistent rejections, consistently not meeting the bar with CoS requests can lead to potentially having a Home Office audit. 4 reasons this matters. CoS approvals has become a genuine bottleneck for lots of the organizations I chat to. I'm trying to think of an anecdote. I was up at the Care Road shows up in Liverpool a few months ago, chatting to an organization who had lots of renewals upcoming and were just being given refusal after refusal with CoS requests, even though they could show all of the right things. I think it took them 3 or 4 attempts to ensure that they could get their CoSs back. And a rejected or delayed request doesn't just cost you the hire, it really slows down the whole recruitment pipeline. And poor applications don't simply fail, they put your license under even more scrutiny, as discussed. And without that consistent process, which we really advise, the same failures consistently repeat, whether it's a CoS request you're aiming to do or achieve a few weeks ago or a few months out. So get the CoS right, and a lot of the downstream pain disappears with your Home Office compliance and your hiring. And the CoS isn't just, it's where most sponsorship problems actually begin. Get it right and your worker starts on time, no gap in care to cover, but get it wrong and you're looking at, again, that query, refusal, or costly reapplication. And remember, every CoS you assign is almost a declaration to the Home Office for them to come back and check additional things. Not sure about you, but I'd much rather be responding to less emails from the Home Office than more. And we respond to a lot of emails from the Home Office. So this is, again, just really the point in time within a sponsorship life cycle that we believe the risk is either created or stamped out. So with all of that in mind, how do COSs actually work? For those who are familiar with the process, none of this will come across as new. But as some people have already said in the chat, they're relatively new to sponsorship, which again is absolutely amazing. So we're just going to cover off some of the basics. I'm also just going to look back in the chat now. What are people saying? Linda's saying, given that it's only 5 days, the amount of information requested is ridiculous. And requesting information on non-CoS employees feels like they do not really want to issue new CoSs. I definitely think the current government's got a mandate on reducing net migration numbers, Linda, hence why I think, again, making it a little bit more hard, like they're making it harder for organizations. Doesn't mean you can't get them. I think just more thought and evidence and upfront needs to go into them. Cool. So back to the slides. So what does it look like to assign a COS, or what do you do when you get them? If you're a new sponsor, your sponsor license typically comes with a number of undefined COSs for you to use. And all of this is predicated on the fact that you hold a sponsor license, and previous to that, you have your CQC registration. So you get your CQC registration, you get your sponsor license. Typically, you've named 1 or 2 individuals that you would like to hire part of that process. You then get your sponsor license and those undefined COSs. You can assign them then to the individuals. If you run out of your COSs, you can put another in-year application to get more undefined COSs. And if you're thinking about, how soon before someone's start date or renewal process can you assign a COS, it's up to 3 months before. Then that individual has obviously 3 months to complete the visa process. And we're going to talk a little bit about defined and undefined next as well, because there's some nuances with those. And what we see as well is the Home Office is almost having like a use it or lose it policy. If you're asking for 10 this year, but you maybe only use 6, maybe next year you're going to ask for another 10, but the Home Office might come back and say, hey, you only used 6 of your 10 last year, so we're only going to give you 6 this year. So again, evidencing exactly how many you need and producing the evidence for that is really crucial in getting the exact amount of COSs that you want. So we've spoken about defined COSs and undefined. This distinction, everything else rests on. And some people new to sponsorships quite often get this wrong. So there are 2 types of certificates of sponsorship. A defined COS is for someone applying from outside the UK unskilled worker route. Hence, it's not that relevant to the care sector at the moment, albeit some larger organizations, they might be hiring someone else into their company, but the majority of visas and COSs assigned in the care space are obviously carers and senior carers. An undefined COS is what we're kind of generally always talking about. And this is for someone already in the UK, switching into sponsorship, switching into the care sector, or extending their stay. You don't necessarily need to ask permission for every single one undefined COS you get. You can apply for these in bulk. You can also request that your annual allocation is turned on. So, the Home Office can kind of perpetually top you up with COSs each year. Obviously, if there's any confusion in assigning an undefined CoS to someone overseas or defined CoS to someone in the UK, you're probably looking at an outright refusal. So the wrong type and the visa is refused automatically. But again, for the purposes of this session, for the purposes of the care sector, the majority of the time, I'd almost say like 99% of the time, we're talking undefined COSs, given the changes to rules and regulations from 2025. And again, for those new to sponsorship, every extension needs a CoS. So this is where switching and renewals coming and why they sit in the undefined bucket. When a worker who's already in the UK switches into the skilled worker route, or when an existing sponsored worker visa is coming up for renewal, you need the undefined COSs, and it comes out of that allocation you're given. So you're giving 10, and whether it's someone new or whether it's someone renewal, it's paying down the same bucket of undefined COSs. So, there's a lot of planning that goes into this in terms of, how many COSs are you going to need to use in the next few months or up until the end of the year? When does an individual's visa expire? And do you even currently have enough COSs available? I'm not sure, and feel free again to share it in the chat, how you track how many undefined COSs you maybe have at the moment, and how many you're anticipating that will be used up. Cool. I also see a few more comments as well, which I'm going to circle back to. Thanks, Jack, Nick, which is really helpful. I'm just going to circle back to them slightly later in today's session. So we now know what an undefined COS is, we know defined COS is, but what does a home office expect with every request? And this might be what's most valuable from today's session. And we really grouped this into 3 buckets. The home office expects these 3 kinds of evidence in every single request. First of all, evidencing the role, the job details, the signed employment contract. Then we've got the operational evidence, your staffing data, and proof of genuine business need. Can you show them the difference between the hours you're contracted and the hours of your staff? Or how your committed staff are working maybe above the hours in their contract? And then we've also got that candidate evidence, who are they, their visa status, and whatever your sector, the principle is the same. Show the role is genuine and the recruit is eligible. In care, there is probably that additional extra layer. But the reason most requests fail isn't this evidence doesn't exist. It's just that it was incomplete or inconsistent across the application. Again, what we try and do here at Borderless is almost overshare with the home office, because I believe you can never tell them too much in argument of getting those additional COSs. Also, now just going to talk a little bit more about maybe extra evidence by scenario. I'm just going to take a sip of my coffee though. Depending on your situation as an organization or how frequently you're applying for COSs, the home office might look for different things. If you're perhaps replacing someone who resigned or was dismissed, evidence of that departure ready is really helpful. For example, ideally a P45. If you're growing, evidence of the increased demand, new contracts, client referrals, expansion plans, more service hours, organizational change, again, really works in your favor when putting in an application. For extensions, have the full individual details to hand and really look to prioritize the visas expiring the soonest. Of your sponsored workers, do you track whose visa is falling, who will be expiring next? And then finally, what we're seeing an increased amount of is, activity in acquisitions or transfers and 2Ps at the moment. So, with these, if you're looking to acquire an organization or transfer individuals over, really ask the seller of the organization to, reassign COSs before completion. So, you don't take over, you don't come in on day one and someone says, hey, my visa runs out next Monday, because then you really will be scrambling. But what are the common COS failures we see as well? And I'm sure there's probably going to be questions around this. The single biggest reason requests fail is genuine vacancy. The home office wants to see that the role is real and the role is needed. This might be the fact that, job descriptions don't match the COS. The job description and COS must tell the same story. If the duties listed on the job description don't align with the occupation code on the COS, the home office will question whether the role is genuine. I always think as well, if you're uncertain if they match up, they probably don't. you want to be quite certain and be able to have pretty solid evidence that the description of the SOC and the job description match up. And again, common mistake is just copying and pasting generic job descriptions without tailoring it to the specific SOC code requirements. Every duty listed should be traceable back to the occupation code definition as per like CASCOT publishes. And, responsibilities unclear or inconsistent as well. Vague language like assisting with various tasks or supporting the team is a bit of a red flag to the Home Office. The Home Office wants to see you being as specific as possible. Concrete duties that reflect a real working role will be really, really important here. Again, not enough business need. The Home Office wants to understand why this role exists and why it needs to be filled now. A cause without context looks like a paper exercise. So, if you cannot explain the genuine need for the worker in the role at this time, the Home Office will do it for you, and their interpretation will be not be in your favor. Another cause failure we see, and the second big one really is salary. This is quite clear cut, so I'm not sure how lots of people do fall foul of this one. But every occupation code has a specific going rate set by the Home Office, and it's not enough to simply meet, not to meet this. The going rate can change depending on the individual, as we all know, especially outside of the care space. And some things that lead it into this salary mismatch is the working hours calculated incorrectly. So the annualized salary on the CoS must be based on the guaranteed contracted hours. And again, misalignment with the salary, with the SOC code and the thresholds is just easy pickings for the Home Office to reject your application. Each SOC code carries its own going rate, and the salary must be benchmarked against that. Again, most people kind of know this, but we still see it falling down. And sometimes this is because the individual managing the payroll in larger organizations or the individual managing performance is maybe unaware of Home Office compliance duties within an organization. So what are some practical tips that you can do with before every application? So here's just a small practical checklist, the things to do before every submission, so you're not asked for more evidence later, or if you are, you're a lot better prepared. So validate the role against genuine vacancy rules, confirm the salary meets the occupation code threshold, check every CoS field is complete and consistent, and prepare those supporting documents up front. Those are the documents we spoke about earlier, the P45, the growth plans, the contracted hours, and have that documented in a file ready to go, presuming that they're going to come back and ask you that. And then finally, I think, every process that breaks is probably a lack of a system. So really look to standardize your submission process and systemize how you do it, such that things won't fall through the gaps. On this one as well, I've actually just got another poll to push out. For those new to sponsorship and for those who are already sponsoring, I would love to know how confident you are in your CoS request process. I'm just going to push this out. So are you very confident? You're kind of here to reconfirm what maybe you already know. You've been doing it for years, and that's great. Are you somewhat confident? Maybe you've done one or two. However, the rules are always changing. The landscape of immigration is getting a bit harder, or you're not confident at all. And it's okay to be in that bucket as well. I think many smaller sponsors who are just getting started aren't confident. No one's expecting you to be a qualified immigration advisor and be able to handle all of this when all that you would like to do is hire best-in-class talent. I think, it's almost like the Home Office is expecting all of us to be qualified. Or maybe I'll see many of you on the next immigration advisors course as you manage it. Cool. So I'm just going to now, it's got another 30 seconds. Just going to let a few others complete that. Cool. So we've got 20% of people who are very confident. That's really awesome to see. I think every organization that feels confident with CoS requests are going to benefit. The downstream effects of getting that right are amazing. And I think, being able to hire best-in-class talent who is sponsored is a real strategic unlock for your organization. I chat with companies all different shapes and sizes, to big companies up in Scotland, to maybe small domiciliary organizations, and all have their own opinions on, what percentage of their workforce should be sponsored or shouldn't be. And it really comes down to personal preferences, and also the regional changes as well. For example, you might be somewhere where it's really hard to hire domestic staff, or it's really hard to find specific speciality skills, such that sponsorship is a real commercial unlock for you as an organization, which is positive. And we track a lot of sponsored organizations, and I think it's like 50 or 60 companies every single day are getting a new sponsor license. Cool. So what are the final answers for that poll? So we're seeing, 20% very confident. The majority of individuals here today, and I think this is true for the whole sector, are somewhat confident. I think that makes a lot of sense. On the flip side as well, we've got about a third of individuals, which is totally okay, who are not confident at all. This can be quite an important part of the immigration process, and not being confident, I think, is the first step in terms of coming to sessions like these, or maybe downloading our CoS application checklist, which we'll chat about a bit more, and just thinking internally as well, because if you do have COSs coming up for renewal, it's definitely good to get a bit more confident. Cool. Thank you so much, everyone. And this is really then feeds into how Borderless improves the CoS process. This is what we've built Borderless exactly to handle. The platform validates every CoS request before it goes into the Home Office, so the genuine vacancy and salary issues get caught really early. It looks to standardize applications so they process faster, and keeps your documentation complete and in one place. And then it also tracks all of your allocations and deadlines, so you can never get caught out by that 5-day window or run out of CoSs mid-year. And the goal for us is really giving organizations consistency, validation, and structure across every single application. And I think one thing I'm really, really proud of is how what we're doing is translating into real-world success for organizations. And this is what a good process, whether it's Borderless or internally, delivers. The industry average for approvals for CoSs sits around 30%, but across the requests that Borderless handles is 96%. So we're seeing, over 2x increase in approval rates. And obviously these CoSs go straight back to you as organizations to use. We handle tens, and I think it peaks, 75 CoS requests per week. And obviously have helped get over 6,000 CoSs. And, I'll let, one of our customers make the point rather than me. Even Christian over at Wessex Care says that, his words really capture the outcome we're aiming for every one of you. Getting sponsorship right isn't just about compliance. It's about, lower legal costs, a quicker, easier process, and the peace of mind that you're on the right side of immigration law. Cool. Just a quick plug as we're coming towards the end of our session before we go into the Q&A. Our next webinar with QCS is all around understanding how technology and AI can support with the Home Office, and maybe how we're using it at Borderless to support applications, to proofread, to make sure everything is in the right place. So I'm just going to leave that on screen for a few seconds, and hopefully Prashant can also just share it as he already has in the chat to register for the next one, which is great. Cool. So we're now just rounding up to the part of the webinar. We're just going to do some Q&A. I'm also a small caveat. As much as I'm knowledgeable about immigration, what's happening, chat with the providers all the time. I'm unfortunately not one of our immigration experts, and I'm not immigration IAA authorized immigration advisor. Hence, I can't give too much specific advice, but that's where you can maybe find some time with someone on our team. And 2 QR codes up on the screen before we dive in and I read the chat. First of all, if you found this session useful and you want more of a download or a checklist for requesting more CoSs, we've got a new checklist, which is again free to download. Please go ahead and scan the QR code, and perhaps Prashant can also share the checklist as he has. And then secondly, if you are looking to become more confident in your process, or to maybe evaluate your sponsorship and how you're handling it internally, feel free to find some time with someone in our team. There's zero obligations post that conversation. Hopefully, if anything, it can really just help you uncover or think about immigration and sponsorship compliance in a different way. And Prashant has just put that link in. Cool. So now is my favorite time of the session. I'm just going to go through the chat, maybe call out some comments and answer stuff where I can. Cool. So what's Jack says? Jack says, we were successful in obtaining a priority slot. This was for 10 COSs, really positive. We were then asked to submit evidence, and this has now been 10 weeks, and we have heard nothing. Of course, this isn't a priority service. We had to terminate 2 employees. I'm really sorry to hear about that, Jack. To resolve their CoS requirements in time, what can be done about the CoS allocation turnaround time? Is there anything that can actually be done? I feel awful. Yeah. So, Jack, I don't think you're alone with this. I think where you can, I know it's frustrating, but go down the priority route, and perhaps if you just presume that everything you do with that home office, they're going to hit the minimum. So what's the maximum time they're going to take to get your request back to you? I think there might be 1 or 2 other really small nuanced things that you can do to support that. But I guess, there's even something at Borderless. We're in contact with the home office every day, hounding them and chasing them on behalf of our customers. Linda's also responded to that, saying Linda was perhaps given 5 days to respond, yet it takes them months to return a decision. Again, really frustrating, I know. But I think, again, the best thing you can do is put your best foot forward, specifically when it comes to evidence and what you're giving them. Cool. So, and Keita is saying you're having some competency issues with a few senior healthcare assistants in care, maybe looking to move them to maybe the healthcare assistant. So from senior to not senior. This is where things can become quite uncertain, because I was actually just chatting with our immigration lead, Lowell, this morning about this specific case in terms of someone going from senior to junior or senior to not senior, and the Home Office came back and said, can you please evidence that they're working at the lower seniority SOC code? Again, this is then a clash in the compliance side of things to say someone has to be working to their SOC code. Again, it's a very fine line to fall, and definitely something to pick up separately. So Zahir is asking, does the employee need to be employed by the company for 3 months before we can provide sponsorship? So this is if they're not already on the 6135, 6136 SOC code. So this is if someone is still switching in to the care sector. And again, this is only valid for a few different routes. For example, if they're on a dependent visa, if they're on a student or graduate visa, they have to be payrolled for 3 months before switching. For example, someone can't switch into care from all visa routes. Someone's saying, can we choose not to renew someone's CoS? Yep. You can part ways with individuals just as if they were domestic workers. You are by no means tied to keep them within your organization. Just looking through some other questions. Linda's just asking, do you have to report every period of sickness? I think, again, there's no harm in over-reporting when someone's been off. There's specific nuances if someone's been off for more than a specific amount of consecutive days to report on the SMS. Again, we've got actually another download specifically tackling or covering SMS or change of circumstance that you need to report. Someone saying, can we report maternity leave to the Home Office? Yep, that's definitely something you should be reporting to the Home Office. Amita is saying, what else should you be reporting? Obviously, this session was all around COSs. We don't have time, unfortunately, this session to cover everything. But again, feel free to get on our website. We've got checklists and other webinars covering specifically that. If it's urgent, feel free to find some time with someone in our team. Cool. Also seeing lots of different people from different places. Marianne from London, that's awesome. Saying you're new, well, they're saying they're new to dom care. They're doing 90 hours a week. Wow. That's a lot of hours. Definitely sounds like you might be able to evidence that the hours are there to hire someone, especially if you've already got a sponsor license. Cool. I'm just seeing if there's any more messages. Blessing's asking, what's the guidance on issuing CoSs to a relative or director or other senior person in the company? You're not allowed to hire, members of family. You can't circumnavigate the immigration rules here in the UK such that someone might be to stay in here. Again, it might be slightly different if the individual is a genuine worker. But obviously, if the Home Office were to turn up and you've got people down as care workers and they're not delivering what's stated on their CoS and job description, I think you could find yourself in maybe a bit of hot bother. Someone's asking, if a worker is leaving the company, what reason should you put it under? I think you should put it under the reason which is relevant. Maybe they've resigned, maybe they're not the best fit for your organization, maybe they found another sponsor. I think you should be as true as possible when it comes to reporting. If you don't renew a CoS, do they have to leave the organizations? Yep, typically, as their renew visa comes to an end, they will no longer have the right to work in the UK without a sponsor. Cool. There's a few questions around hours and pay slips. I think they can be quite nuanced, so I don't want to cover them just now, and we'll be covering them in some of the upcoming webinar around compliance duties. And again, if it's really specific about an individual, please do find some time with someone in our team. Cool. I think I've just got 1 minute left, so I'm just going to look to wrap up there. But I think, did I have one final slide before then? Yeah, I did actually. And it's how did we do? A short survey is about to pop up, and I really appreciate just 2 minutes to tell us what you liked about this session and what you think we could do better. I've been on Borderless for 2 years. I really enjoy delivering these webinars and getting the perspectives of everyone that's joined. But again, we want to deliver as much value as possible within these 30 to 45 minutes. So there will be a pop-up shortly, or you'll receive an email shortly after. But thank you so much for your time this morning. I hope you found it helpful, and perhaps see many of you at some of the upcoming the Care Show in October. Please do look out for the Borderless stand. Come say hello. I think we'll be a few other small regional care associations in the coming weeks. So please do say thank you. And have a lovely rest of your Thursday, everyone else. Thank you so much, everyone.